Are you tired of those gray, boring loading screens and you're trying to have something like this or even like this into your game? I'm C-Loaf, and by the end of this video, you'll have your very own professional looking loading screen ready for your game. So let's get started. Two concepts in Roblox that I'm going to introduce to help us build a loading screen is ReplicatedFirst and Content Provider. ReplicatedFirst, as you can see right here, what this service does is it loads before everything else in your game. So anything that you put inside of ReplicatedFirst will load before everything else. We can actually create a loading screen and put it inside of ReplicatedFirst. So if you want a custom experience from the moment somebody joins your Roblox game and you don't want that default gray screen, then ReplicatedFirst is going to be how you do that. So let's start by adding a new screen GUI and starter GUI. So we're going to add a new screen GUI and we are going to name this loading screen. So right now we don't see anything, but we're going to go ahead and add our first frame. And this is our first visual thing that we're going to see. So let's go ahead and add it. Now we can see this frame is up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this frame so that it's filling up the entire screen. So the way that I can do that is I have this plugin called UI Editor. It's free. So if you go ahead and click on Manage Plugins and then press on this plus button, search for the plugin named UI Editor and install that yourself. It's not necessary. It's just what I find easier. So let's go ahead and use that to, first we're going to remove the offset. So we're going to set this to 0 and 0. So we're actually going to use size scale, set this to 1, set this to 1. Now it's going to fill up the whole screen. And the reason why 1 fills up the whole screen, the X coordinate is going from left to right, and the Y coordinate is going from up to down. So if I were to set the X coordinate to 1, it's going to fill up the entire screen 100%. If I were to set the Y coordinate to 1, it's going to fill up the Y coordinate, which is up and down 100%. But let's say I wanted to fill up the screen 50%. Instead of 1, we'll do 0.5. And now you can see it's only filled up 50% of the screen. Let's just go ahead and do a black background. So under frame, we're going to click on background color. We'll make it like a navy, more like a navy blue actually. Let's do like right there. Perfect. And now we are going to add a text label. And this will serve as the label that is reading off where the game is loading at, what asset number it is. And you'll see what I mean once we add the script in and the functionality in. So the way that I'm going to get this label to the middle of the screen, I'm going to adjust the position. I'm going to do 0.5 and but as you can see, it's actually not in the middle of the screen. It's actually near the bottom right. The reason for that is because of the anchor point. If we actually set the anchor point of this label to the middle option here, it's in the dead center of the screen now. So we are going to make this text scaled so that it scales with every screen. I think the background is ugly. We will make it transparent and we will make the text color white. So now that we've got the label, let's go ahead and create the actual loading bar that goes below this. And let's go ahead and name this. Let's go ahead and name this main frame. I'm going to make a second frame and I'm going to label this bar. And now we want to get this bar below label. So we know that we want to center the bar in the middle here, the middle of the screen. We're going to take the X axis and set it to 0.5. And remember to set your anchor point. And now we're going to set the Y 0.6 to get it right below the label. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, it's right below it. That's perfect. And now we want this loading bar to look more like a bar and less like a square. So just get rid of this offset. We'll just work with the scale of the screen. So the Y value, I'm going to do 0.075. And then we're going to set the X axis to 0.5 to take up half of the screen. Perfect. So now we've got this bar frame, but we need the actual part inside the bar that loads and makes progress. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go inside of this bar frame and we are going to make a text label. And this can be a text label or an image box, anything really, but in this case we're just going to do a text label. It's going to set the text to blank, nothing, because all we want the text label for is just the white box itself. We're actually going to change the color. We're actually going to change the background color to green. And now you can see this loading bar would kind of move across the bar frame until it reaches 100%. but we want to make sure that it fills like this bottom part too. So what we're actually going to do, since this text label is inside of this frame, the same thing applies when we use position scale and size scale. It's not going to scale to the entire screen. It's going to scale to whatever it's inside of. So since text label is inside of bar, if I set text label's Y scale, first of all, let's remove the pixel scales, the offset. We'll set that to 0, set that to 0. If we set the size scale to 1 and 1, we can see that now this green bar is taking 100% of the space inside of this frame. But we actually want it to start more like at 0%. So we are actually just going to drag it back here to where we see now the X is set to 0. And we are going to have a script that every time something loads, it applies more of the X scale to this bar until it reaches 100%. So we are going to set this back to 0, set this back to 0. So now we're going to go ahead and make a local script. We are actually going to insert this loading screen inside the local script. Now let's go ahead and open this local script. And now we are just going to make a bunch of references to our player, the GUI elements in this player, so that we can make them do what we want with the loading bar. So let's go ahead and reference the player service. Now let's go ahead and reference ReplicatedFirst. Now we are going to refer to the content provider, which is what I was speaking about in the first part of this video. Content provider allows us to load different assets in before the player sees them, so that when the player starts seeing things in the game, everything's already preloaded for them. And now we're going to go ahead and remove the default loading screen. And the way we do this is by referring to ReplicatedFirst, and then we're going to say remove default loading screen. So now that we've removed the default loading screen, we are going to refer to the player. And now we are going to refer to the player's GUI. And now we are going to refer and clone the loading screen GUI. And right now it's in starter GUI, so this will just duplicate to every player. But we are actually going to end up moving this script along with this GUI over to ReplicatedFirst. The only reason we have it in starter GUI for now is just so that we can edit it here. But if we were to remove it now, see, it removes it, so we can't edit it anymore. So for now, we're just going to keep it in starter GUI, just in case we want to make changes. But let's go ahead and clone the loading screen GUI. And you're going to see we're going to be using a lot of wait for child. So just because this is going to be one of the first things to load, we want to make sure that it actually finds the loading screen, or it actually finds the player GUI. So wait for child is a safe way to wait for that asset to load so that it can actually find it and assign it to this variable, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to do loading screen, script, wait for child, and we see that our screen GUI, we named it loading screen. Actually, here we forgot to clone it. Let's go back here and say clone, and we're going to set its clone's parent to the player's GUI. We're going to now refer to this main frame here. Now we are going to refer to this text label, and we see we just have it named as text label, so we'll do text label. The last thing we're going to refer to is the actual loading bar. So let's just name this loading bar, and now we can refer to it as, but we know that we're actually not trying to get the bar, we're trying to get the actual loading bar. So we're going to say, again, wait for child and loading bar. So now we're referring to this item right here, this green bar right here. So, all right, now we are going to create an array of all of the assets in the game. So the way that we can do that is we can say local assets. We're just creating a new array named assets, and we're going to refer to the game. And instead of saying get children, we're going to use get descendants. That's what we want to use in this case. And now we are going to loop through every asset as it loads in. So we're going to say for I, which is just referred to as index. We're going to say each asset in pairs. And now we're going to refer to the assets array that we just created. We're going to say do. So this is just a classic for loop that's going to loop through this array. And every time it loops, we're able to get some information in each loop. So we're able to get the index number of the loop. So that means, are we in asset number 1, asset number 2, asset number 3? And we're also able to get the asset itself. So now we're going to set the loading text to display how much progress we're making. So we're going to say loading text. So here what we're doing is we're just editing the actual text value of our text label, and we are going to say loading space, and we're going to concatenate that with the index, which is just we referred to as I. So if we're on asset number 1, then this is going to be 1. If we're on asset number 300, then this is going to be 300 in the loop. We're going to concatenate that with a slash. So we're going to say we're in this asset out of, and then here we're going to say the total amount of assets. So the way that we can do that is just by putting a number sign and then saying assets. So what this does is this will give us the total number of values inside of this array. We're getting an error here. The reason why is we forgot to concatenate this string with this instance. So now it's not going to show us an error. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell our player that we want this specific asset to load in first. So we're going to refer to our content provider, and we're going to say preload async. And here we need to use a curly bracket. And inside of this curly bracket, we are going to specify whatever asset it's looping through. So now we are going to make a variable for our progress. The way that we are going to move our green loading bar across this loading bar frame is by editing the X value. The scale, what we can do is we know that if we have, let's say 3,000 assets, and if we are on asset number 2,000, then how do we display that it's only on asset 2,000 through the loading bar? Well, we can do a quick equation that represents this progress, and that equation is the index divided by the total number of assets, which if we were to take, for example, if we had 250 and we have 3,000 assets, we would take 250 divided by 3,000, and here we can see that the value would be 0.083, and if we actually take that into a percentage, it's going to be 8.3. So we know that if we are on asset 250 out of 3,000, it would be, this bar would load to about 8.3%. So what we can do with that is once we have this equation, we can change the bar's size. Oops, it is actually the loading bar size, and we're going to use udim2. udim2 is what allows us to change either the size or the position. It lets us put in 4 values for the X scale, the Y scale, and the X offset and the Y offset. But we know that we're not using offsets at all. We're just using scale. So the way that that's represented is we're going to do udim2.new parentheses. And inside these parentheses, we need to put in 4 numbers that represent the size scale, the X value for the size scale, the X value for the size offset, the Y value for the size scale, and the Y value for the size offset. So we know that we want the X to represent progress. So remember, we're setting this variable to the X scale, and now we got to put 3 other numbers to represent X offset, Y scale, Y offset. So we're going to say 0, and then the Y offset, we want to make sure that it's always set to 1 no matter what. And the final value, the Y offset, we're just going to set it to 0. So now we've got this loop that will update our text to show what number in the loop, or what number asset we're loading in out of the total amount of assets. And then the loop is telling the client to load that asset, or to preload that asset. And then we are creating a value that represents the asset number that we're in divided by the total number of assets, which will give us the number that we can use to adjust this loading bar size. So after we go through this loop, we are going to set the loading text. We know that after this loop is completed, we want our text to probably say something like loading complete. So let's go ahead and set this loading text equal to loading is now completed. Exclamation point. We're excited that we can finally play the game. And we will just set the bar size just to make sure that it looks full. We will set the bar size to X scale 1, X offset 0, Y scale 1, Y offset 0. So now we know that'll fill the entire bar up. This needs to be set to loading bar, not just bar, because that's what I named my variable up here. And then we are going to wait, let's say 2 seconds, and then we're going to take this entire loading screen GUI and we are going to destroy it so that it's removed from the player's screen and the player can start the game. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. I'm going to hit play. Now we can see that we actually forgot to move this starter GUI, this local script. We forgot to move it to ReplicatedFirst. And we can see that because we didn't do that, we weren't able to see the GUI, the loading screen, immediately. So that should show you what ReplicatedFirst actually does for us. It's the first thing that the player sees in the game. So that's why we want to put the loading screen and this local script inside of ReplicatedFirst. So we're going to go ahead and test it out. Now we can see it is loading. It's lagging a little bit because we're testing it in Roblox Studio. But if you were testing it in just the regular player client, then it would look a little smoother. It might actually load too fast for you to even see much progress. But now we can see we're making progress here. And we got an error here. It's because we didn't do udinto.new. This will create the new value and assign it to the size. So this was just incorrect syntax pretty much. But we saw that the loading bar worked. But something that we did notice is that there's this ugly translucent bar above the loading screen. And from my understanding, you used to be able to get rid of that bar, but because it has core Roblox functionality, there's not really a way to remove this. There's only a way to edit it. So the way that we can get around this so that our loading screen takes up this complete bar is by adding one line of code. And if we go back here into the local script, we are going to edit a specific property of our loading screen GUI. How we do this is once we've cloned over the loading screen, we are going to say loading screen dot ignore GUI inset. And you can see what this does is determines whether the screen GUI overflows into the range of Roblox's core UI elements. So we will still see Roblox's core UI elements in the top left, but we won't see that translucent tab because our GUI will now overflow into that tab. So it'll kind of all coincide together. So let's go ahead and type that out, and we are going to set that ignore to true. So now it will ignore the inset that core Roblox feature adds. So let's go ahead and click play. Now we can see there's no more top loading bar. Player can't see what's going on. We're just loading the game. And like I said, because this is in Roblox Studio, it's a little bit jumpier and laggier, but we can see that it'll start loading the assets a little smoothly. There we go. Loading. Now it's going to say loading is now completed, and it's going to destroy itself. So just like that, you know how to build a custom loading screen for your Roblox game. We used ReplicatedFirst, content provider, and a little bit of scripting, and that's really all it took. So if you found this helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to CLoaf for beginner-friendly Roblox tutorials, and leave a comment down below on what kind of systems you guys want to learn next. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.